I was right about CM Punk, and so was Jim Cornette. CM Punk was recently, as if by now you don't know, on the Ariel Helwani podcast. By the time I upload this, plenty of other channels will have covered the story and caught you up with it, but to summarize, Punk let everyone know that Tony Khan is a nice guy, but not a good boss, commenting that Khan is too much of a nice guy. Punk also had less than flattering things to say about the so-called elite. I saw an article which I'll screenshot here saying, quote, CM Punk shared his side of the story, but now someone from AEW needs to respond. And I find this ridiculous. We've just come out of months and months of Tony Khan's narrative and AEW's narrative being the only one we knew about this situation, and it caused a large segment of the wrestling fan base to turn their backs on Punk, and to see him as a disease to a locker room, which, realistically, sorry to say this fellow Marks, he isn't. Punk signed an NDA with AEW regarding this whole thing, a non-disparagement agreement meaning Punk isn't allowed to say too many horrible things about AEW. If this is what we're getting filtered through the lens of that NDA, then it only tells part of the story, and therefore we can assume that if Punk was untethered, he would have a lot more grievances to air. A highlight for me was when CM Punk said, quote, if you're more than happy that some goof said you had a 5-star match but the building is only 1/4 full, then we aren't in the same business. This is crazy to have happened just after I made my video about CM Punk mentioning the harshest AEW critic Jim Cornette, as quotes like that seem like they could have come from Jim himself. Again, I'm not going to go into everything he said. Instead, I'm going to suggest that this is a learning moment for all wrestling fans. We need to wait before the full story comes out before we judge a situation. There's a large segment of the wrestling audience that now gets lost in the idea of trying to cancel somebody before they even know what actually went on. CM Punk kept his mouth closed for months about this situation, whilst AEW and the internet dragged his name through the mud. Also, Tony Khan saying he was ever fearful for his life in this situation is one of the softest things I have ever heard from a grown man in my life. You were fearful for your life because some guy put a chokehold on another guy? Grow up. Not even going to entertain it. A lot of people are associating CM Punk's interview with the recent AEW releases. Chances are they're not at all linked, because that's not really how firing somebody works. I assume that the decision to release those wrestlers was in the works before Punk said anything. So long story short, I was right about Punk's wrestling philosophy aligning with Jim Cornette. On his podcast, Jim all but said exactly this would happen from the moment Punk walked into AEW. Here's why. The Great One did a great video about this exact topic, making the point that as much as a lot of fans thought CM Punk was the problem, after CM Punk's departure, AEW was still full of drama and nonsense and hasn't been doing too great in the ratings since. I think at this point even the most dense of AEW supporters would admit that. The Great One talked about how he didn't realize the Adam Page situation was that bad when Adam Page had come out and gone into business for himself trying to make CM Punk look as bad as possible. Funny that most of us in the cult of Cornette already had that opinion because of Jim's takes on the situation all throughout. You may not like Jim, but he was right on the money with this when it seemed no one else in the wrestling business was taking Punk's side. Jim Cornette, a day one kind of guy. It's clear the established AEW stars were pushing CM Punk away despite the fact that CM Punk was popping their ratings and bringing a whole new audience to AEW. AEW, as AEW does, completely fumbled it and haven't been able to recreate that momentum since. Even if you believe the AEW narrative regarding CM Punk, all this drama and lack of morale definitely carries over to the audience who, after a while, might just feel exhausted by it and change the bloody channel. As much as I like the Great One and I like a lot of wrestling YouTubers, I can't believe, or maybe I can believe all too well, how quickly they were willing to go against Punk in this situation when a little bit of analysis, even at the time, could have told you what was going on there. If I'm being real with you, I think the elite have a lot more in common with what they think about groups like the Clique than they would like to admit. So yeah, this is my video, just to say watch the CM Punk Ariel Helwani video, watch the reactions from the wrestling YouTube space. This is an interesting time where maybe a large portion of the online fan base has to take a step back and think, maybe we judged this situation far too quickly. Hopefully going forward, if something like this goes down, we'll wait in future for more information to come out. And hopefully that information won't be filtered through NDA agreements, because let's face it, that's no fun for us fans who find the backstage drama just as compelling as the on-screen product. Or in the case of AEW, the only interesting angles they've really had was backstage drama. Everything else was mid, and you can't actually tell me otherwise. CM Punk also tried to stop AEW from launching Collision, but they launched it anyway, and it's an abject failure. The only reason Collision was launched was because the Elite wouldn't just talk it out with Punk. This reeks of backstage politicians stopping someone from being more of a star. Punk also implied how WWE has been more sympathetic and helpful to his tricep injury than AEW were. This sort of undermines the entire point of what AEW was supposed to be. I also saw that in the video by the Great One that he expressed fear as a wrestling YouTuber of the backlash that he would get from the AEW audience because he said something bad about AEW and he felt he had to disclaimer it. Gonna be real with you, I don't give a flying monkey's chuff what AEW marks on the net say. If AEW is good, I will say it's good. And when it's hot garbage, I will bloody well let you know, if I bother to comment on it at all, as my favorite thing to do with my channel is talk about the old school. But I think AEW fans so vehemently defend AEW based on the idea of what it was meant to be. True freedom for wrestlers in an industry that felt constrained by the big bad empire. Unfortunately, whilst this is a nice story, it's not reflective of reality. There's a lot to undo and a lot to redo with AEW if they're going to come back from the hole they've dug themselves into here. And to be honest, I hope they do. I want there to be legitimate competition, and I think part of the reason WWE has been so on form as of late is because of the existence of AEW. So to recap, Jim was right all along. The wrestling fan base turned their back on Punk for no good reason. AEW is a bit of a drama hellhole held back by the egos of the Elite. Tony Khan needs a backbone. Wrestling YouTubers need to stop simping for AEW as much as they do. And my channel, I'm not a politician. Backstage or otherwise. I don't care how angry my opinions will make people. I'm here to say what I bloody well think and record as much wrestling history as I can. Because I am a sarcastic mark, and always will be. Thanks for tuning in again. Hope you enjoy some of the other videos. I made quite a good documentary on Lou Thez, and I'm really proud of it. So I intend on making more content like that, as well as every now and then jumping in to give my unwarranted but objectively correct opinion on whatever goes on in the wacky world of wrestling. So subscribe. Last thing, it's really exciting to be a wrestling fan at the moment. Maybe all this drama does get under your skin a little. Maybe you're in long comment chain arguments about these topics. But try to enjoy it along the way. After the dull years of the 2010s, it's actually really fun to be a wrestling fan again, warts and all.